Welcome to the Focused and Fearless podcast, the show designed to explore how you can step into powerful self-leadership and stop settling for less in your life, business, health, and wealth. I'm your host, Heather Angel, and as a certified energy practitioner, coach, and online business consultant with over a decade of experience, you can expect expansive, honest, and enlightening conversations about what it really takes to create the changes in your life and business that right now may just feel completely out of reach. Thank you for choosing to invest in yourself by listening to this episode. Without further ado, let's dive in. My guest today is Maxine Brown, and I am going to warn you that this is possibly one of the most emotional episodes I've ever recorded. Maxine is truly inspirational. In today's episode, she's going to share her story of how she came through the most challenging 12 months of her life, and her strength just radiates throughout this episode. Maxine is on a mission to help all of those dealing with grief. But what is so fascinating is when we think of grief, or certainly when I thought of grief, I thought of the grief that you feel when you lose a person, when you lose a loved one. Grief comes in so many different forms, and we talk about how we can grieve a loss of identity. We can grieve a loss of routine, a loss of the life that we thought that we were living. And having all lived through a pandemic and going through the immense changes that are happening in the world, grief is something we need to discuss, because it is not being realized that some of those feelings, those emotions, they are stemmed in grief for a loss of something you once had. This episode, as I said, it's slightly emotional at times, but it's so powerful. And I really hope as we transition into these new normals, these new ways of being, as we scale our businesses, grow our businesses, pivot our businesses maybe, I really hope the lessons in today's episode guide you well. So without further ado, I introduce you to the phenomenally strong, amazing Maxine Brown. Maxine, welcome to the Focused and Fearless podcast, my lovely.
Thank you very much, Heather. I'm looking forward to it.
So nice having you here. Now, as I said in the introduction, we are going to have quite a different conversation about your story and how grief affects all of us in so many different ways. And I just want to dive straight in. So if you want to sort of share your experience, your story, and sort of where you've taken it now with your business.
Yeah, of course I can. Well, my story started originally, probably I would say it was October 2009. My daughter was a diabetic, and she'd had a really stinking cold. So because of being diabetic, the doctor said to come and have a swine flu jab and a flu jab, because we've got pandemic now, but at that time in 2009, late on, there was a really bad cases of swine flu and making everybody very, very poorly. So she went off to the doctors, had both injections on the same day. And I was a bit concerned because she'd got a stinking cold, but they said, no, everything's fine. And literally, I think it was 4 days later, she was staying at a friend's house. Sunday morning, I was just packed my car up. I was ready to go down to London with work. And I had a phone call from Lizzie's mobile phone, but it was her best friend on the other end of the phone, saying that Lizzie was very poorly and they called an ambulance. So I asked what happened. They said they don't know. They thought it might have been a diabetes. They weren't sure. She was just not responding very well. So I jumped into the car with my husband and we shot straight to the hospital, because it wasn't, the ambulance was there, so we were on the way to Liz. And we beat the ambulance there. When ambulance arrived, we weren't allowed to see Lizzie or anything. We were put into a relative's room. She was extremely poorly. They let me see her after a couple of hours because, well, as you can imagine, frantic mother, and I was a pain because I wanted to see my daughter. She was 19 years old, but she was very special. I mean, she was my only child, so I just needed to see her. They just said to me, just chat to her, just say what you want, because she's not responding properly. And we chatted, and yes, she was very, very poorly. They presumed she'd got into a diabetic coma. They eventually took her up into intensive care. And we spoke to a consultant, and he said, because she's so poorly, we need to put her onto a life support machine, which we had to agree to. And I said, yeah, do what you need to do. And they put her onto that. And that was just to calm everything down and get her body, trying to sort her body out. And she was in intensive care. She was in a side room, and I was by her bedside majority of the time until the hospital gets saying to me, go home and get some sleep, which you do, but you don't. So you shoot straight back over. And after, I think it was 3 or 4 days, they'd obviously done been taking blood tests and things like that. They decided she got swine flu. So the next time we turned up at the hospital, it was full mask, and you were covered from, and I refused to wear a mask because I said, if I catch it, I catch it, but I can't talk to her properly. I said, I've been seeing her for the last 4 days. I said, today's not going to make any difference. They kept her on her life support machine to keep her body, trying to get her body back to doing some normality, because they obviously pumped her with antibiotics and things like that. And because of obviously being a diabetic as well, it affected her body even more than normal, and that's why she was so poorly. After about 5 days, they started to bring her out of the induced coma. And it took a while to come out. And she kept waking up and scaring us really, because I didn't know what to expect. And she kept looking vacant at me. And then she turned around when she started waking up, she said, I can't see. So I thought, oh no, she's gone blind. Mm-hmm. Then we realized she hadn't got her glasses. So we had to giggle. So it was very sad, but it was also comical as well with typical Liz. And eventually they got her out, but because of her diabetes and everything, her kidneys had failed. So she'd gone from a size 8 up to a size 14. And with Liz, 14 is not huge, but Liz she was only petite. She was only just 5 foot. So she was only a little. And they sent her to another hospital for kidneys. So she was on dialysis after this. And it came through to December. She was in hospital for a long time because it was the end of October. We were now getting to nearly December. And they'd said to us that we can bring her home for her birthday, because her birthday's the 6th of December. But you'll have to bring her back in to hospital. And we said, no, not a problem, but it'd be nice to have her home, because she was on dialysis. And by the sound of things, they were saying that this might be her life going forward. So we said, that's all right, we'll do whatever we need to do. And so we brought her home for her birthday, and we had 4 days at home. We brought her on the 4th. She had a birthday. We had to go back to the hospital for a checkup. But because she was at home and doing things and started to move around and everything, and drinking loads and loads of fluid, and I think it was the right mindset and everything, because she was in her body started to lose some of the fluid. Mm-hmm. And so they did some more tests when we went back for a checkup, and they said, she seems to be doing a lot better than we expected. Take her back home. So she didn't have to go back into hospital, which was fantastic. So she was obviously very weak and everything, but we kept doing everything we had to do. And we had Christmas at home. She went back, and everything was starting to go back. She was back out of her tracky bottoms that I'd had to go and buy to fit her, because nothing fitted her. And she was starting to be able to get into her clothes. We had New Year just quietly at home. And then it was about January the 12th, something like that. She had to go back for a checkup because she was starting to feel so much better and everything. She wanted to get back into her life. She was at college doing a business management degree and working as well for a mobile phone company, and she hated being stuck at home and not allowed to do anything. And so she went back for a checkup, and they'd said to her, look, you've done so much better. You're going to have to be careful, but yes, we're going to sign you off. You just have to come back every so many months for checkups. And so she was really, really happy. She then decided going back to work on the following Monday, which would have been the 18th of January. So she contacted everybody and said, yes, I'm back. And she was a real party animal. And so she was just so pleased to be able to go and see her friends and everything. And on the Friday, the 15th, it was one of her close friends' birthday party. And so she said to me, can I go out? And I said, well, as long as you're sensible, no alcohol, because I said, just don't mess your kidneys up now. We've just gotten them better and everything. And even though she was 20, she was very much a mummy's girl. She would do what I asked, and she was very well, she was good like that. So she said, yeah, that's fine. So she went out with all her mates, and she'd seen everybody that she hadn't seen for ages because they'd been in hospital. And I woke her up Saturday morning and said, come on, you've been in bed long enough, come and help me. And we had a chat, and she was telling me all about Friday night. And then I went out. She texted me in the afternoon and said, I'm going out with my best friend. We're going out for some lunch or some tea. And I said, okay, where are you going? And she sent me a text back and said, Mummy, I'm like you. I can't make my mind up. I'm not sure. I said, that's fine. So I went out with her dad, and we went out for a drink and everything, and came home, and she was out. And I thought, that's strange. I tried to contact her. I couldn't get hold of her. So I thought, oh, she's gone to her friends. She's 20. I can't micromanage her sort of thing. So I've got to give some credit to her. I went to bed, and I must admit, I didn't sleep properly because I like to know she's at home and make sure she's safe. 5:30 that morning, Sunday morning, I had a phone call on my mobile, which I didn't recognise the number. I grabbed the phone, and it was the police. And they asked me if I had a daughter called Lizzie, and they said Elizabeth, but she was only ever known as Lizzie. I said yes. And they said, is she at home? I thought, so I shot into her bedroom. I said, no, she's not. And I said, I have been awake. I must have just off. They said they think there'd been a bad car accident, but they weren't 100% sure what had happened. So I said, well, have you checked the hospitals and everything? He said, look, we're coming round to see you. I said, fine. So I then went on to the hospitals, the local hospitals, to say if has anything happened. I woke my husband up, got dressed, went downstairs, and the police arrived. And they said there's been a horrific car accident. The car had gone over a bridge into a stream, but there'd been bad weather. So Lizzie wasn't driving. It was her best friend. Well, one of her close friends was driving, and the girls had both died. But they couldn't tell us straight away because they obviously had to identify. So I had to give a photograph and everything. And they came back within probably, I don't know, it was half an hour. And she died in the car accident. So obviously we'd just been through everything we'd been through, got her better, and lost her again, which, I mean, it was horrific, absolutely horrific. And then you have to go around telling everybody and sorting everything out, which, it was an awful, awful, awful time. I mean, nobody will ever go through that. And I've learned since, I mean, obviously I was grieving heavily, but we all grieved in different ways. And it was a really, really tough time. And grandparents.
And with, I mean, as a mother, I'm literally doing my very best to keep myself together. Listening to this story, and I'm sure people listening are just absolutely, it's just heartbreaking to go through, to lose a child anyway, in any circumstances, but to go through all of that for so long and be like, do you know what, my little girl's, it doesn't matter if she's 20, doesn't matter when they're 50, we're like, they're still our baby. It's, just about getting her life back. This is great. And to then go through that, I mean, on the night when, you said you didn't sleep very well, I do feel like sometimes mothers have this sort of intuition. Did you feel, when you look back now, did you be like, I bloody knew there was something?
Yeah, I definitely knew something was matter, because Lizzie always contacted me and I couldn't get hold of her. And I thought her phone, I mean, you'd start thinking, oh, it's all right, she's 20, you've got to let her go. But no, deep down, I knew something was wrong, because I mean, I sat up and I know it was gone 3 o'clock before I fell asleep, because I kept waiting for her to come in, because she used to come in after having a few drinks and set the smoke alarm off getting toast, because she knew she had to eat because of her diabetes when she'd had a drink. So I kept waiting to hear the alarm go off or something. So, I mean, and so I deep down, I knew that something just wasn't right. So it was, I think the saddest thing around the time, obviously after losing, because she was such a bubbly young lady and she had so many friends, and it was seeing the youngsters having to try and come to terms with the loss, because we all met up, we all went to where the accident happened and everything, to put flowers down and things like that. And looking back at it, it was so difficult and the press and everything were horrendous, because they put a photograph of the car that was all crumpled after, but they got it out of the ditch with one of the big machines, so it's going to be crumpled. But when putting photographs like that onto a front of a newspaper, I mean, yes, it was horrendous for us to see it, but they weren't thinking about, they were all their friends were like 16 to 20, to the early 20s. And for children or youngsters to see things like that, it's horrible, because that makes their minds think even worse and things like that. So you were having to try and obviously be brave for them as well, because you wanted to take the hurt away from all their friends. Yeah. So it was a horrendous time. But I knew I had to carry on living because Lizzie was an amazing, amazing young lady. I mean, she'd been diabetic since she was 6, but she'd lived a normal life. I mean, it was just one of those things we coped with. She literally went into hospital at half term in February and went back to school on the Monday. She came out because she said, well, I've got to live with it. And she started injecting herself and doing her finger pricks and everything herself so quickly because she knew that was the typical of, right, we'll get on with it. We live, we do everything. And so we started trying to live as normal a life. It's the new normal sort of thing for us. It was empty, our house. Yeah. And we were as well and we went away for weekends and we had to, obviously coming back to an empty house was horrible. But you do. And that's the part of the grief and you have to just work through everything. I know we both drank far too much at the time because I think it numbed us. So you turn to something and I know we were drinking too much. And I remember going out, it was beginning of May, and my husband had drank an awful lot. So I came home because I just said, I can't carry on like this. We've got to sort something out. Things were strained between us, but he kept blaming Lizzie's death. So I kept saying to him, are you sure you're all right? He said, yeah, I just can't get used to losing Liz. And I said, well, we're neither of us going ever to get used to it, but we're going to have to learn to live with it. We need to talk. I said, because talking is so, so important. And I said, if you don't want to talk to me, talk to your friend or somebody, please, because he was worrying me, the way his mindset was working. I don't know what time he came in that night. And then on the Sunday, he was up and out really early. So I sent him a text and said, where are you? What are you doing? Because I was worried, and he didn't message me back for a long, long time. And he walked into the house about, I think it was 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just said, are you all right? And he just said, I don't love you. I don't love anybody anymore. I just don't know what's happening. And literally went up the stairs, came back down the stairs and walked out. And so I thought, right.
Wow. And how long after Liz's death was this?
This was in the May. So only 5 months after losing Liz. So I just sent him a text because he wouldn't pick up his phone. And I just said, are you having an affair? I don't know why I said that or what, and he sent one back and said yes. So I packed my bag.
Oh my gosh.
And I walked out. Well, I phoned my mum and I said, can I come and stay for a couple of days, please? She lived in where I live. Yeah. And she said, yeah, of course you can. And so I literally went upstairs, packed a bag and walked out of the house and went down to my mum's. And I said what happened. And then I worried then because I was frightened of his mindset and the way he was. And then he didn't know I'd left. I just left. So I got hold of his friend and just said, please go and find him and talk to him because I am worried about him. I said, he's not obviously speaking to me, but he'll probably speak to you. And we'd had a rough time when Liz was 17, so it was 3 years previously, but we sorted ourselves out. So I thought everything was going to be okay. We'd been together since I was 17, so years, and we were just coming up to our 25th wedding anniversary. So everybody just thought we were a perfect couple. Yeah. Amazing what you see on the outside, or seen on the happening on the inside. So I think it was the Tuesday, Monday, I went back to work as normal, as you have to. As you do. It was a newish job that I'd got at the time, and so I thought I can't mess it up because I changed jobs as well in between because I just needed to get my head around everything. And I just explained to my manager, I said, look, I'm perfectly all right to do my job, but I've just left my husband like yesterday. I might need a couple of days off just to find a house and bits and pieces. She went, yeah, okay. I messaged him on the Tuesday and said I need to come back to the house to get some paperwork to buy, to get a house. Said, right, I'll be out. I said, okay. So I picked up, because I had a dog at the time as well, so I picked up my dog, picked up a couple of bills that I needed to be able to go and get property. And by the Saturday, I'd found somewhere to move into. I'd filed for divorce because he wouldn't speak to me. And I thought, I'd lost the most precious thing I could ever lose. I'd been through absolute heartache. I'm not prepared to waste my life by somebody having an affair. And when I looked back, I think he'd said to me as well, he'd been having this affair while Lizzie was in hospital. And because he didn't come to the hospital very often, because I know he had a phobia of hospitals, and that's all he kept saying. I'm sorry, when your daughter is dying on it and she's on life support machine, but he wouldn't come to the hospital. He said, I can't cope with it. On the day of Lizzie's funeral, when I look back, he disappeared. And obviously he was speaking to this other woman.
Wow.
And so, I went and found a house. I messaged him for the Saturday. I said, look, I need to come and get some clothes out and a couple of bits. I said, please be out of the house, because I can't see the point of coming face to face with you at present. I then wrote a list of what I was taking out the house. I hadn't been in Lizzie's bedroom since I lost her, because I just couldn't cope. I'd been in once, sorry. I couldn't cope with it because it was literally as still as it was when she died, which was a mess, because that was Lizzie. It was always...
That's girls, isn't it?
But I was having everything out of that bedroom because my father had made all her furniture and it was all special.
Yeah.
So my brother came with a van, my best friend came, my mum and dad, and I literally had a room by room, and I took very little. In fact, when you walked into the house, you couldn't even tell I'd been there. But I just took things that were special, i.e. Lizzie's bits. I took photographs off the wall that were Lizzie that I wanted, and left him the rest of the house. And he sent me a text back when he got back and said to bring everything back and the keys. And I told him, no, sorry, that's it. And we've never, ever actually discussed anything ever since, which he just wouldn't, he admitted to being an adultery. He wouldn't say who she is. I eventually found out and left him to it. He started a new life because his girlfriend, or personally, she moved in quite quickly with her daughter, who was probably 2 years younger than Lizzie.
Right.
So he basically replicated his life with a new family, which was, but if he was happy, I just wanted a break. I just thought, no, I've got to sort myself out now.
But when you look back now, because the strength in women never fails to astound me. It never fails to astound me. But, when I listen to all of that, and I'm sure my listeners as well as me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can resonate with bits and pieces of that. When you look back now, how did you not crumble? Where did you find the strength? And when you look back now, was there a time that you thought, this is too much? To lose your daughter, and within, I think it's about 4 or 5 months.
Or within 5. Yeah, I lost Lizzie on the 16th of January, and I left on the 9th of May. Yeah, 9th of May. And
to then go through divorce, and for it to be in the way that it was, to be betrayed and to have all that heart. I'm just like, you should be wearing a cape right now, because I don't know how some kind of superwoman. When you look back, did you feel present in the moment, or was it very autopilot? I'm just curious to know where you were at that time.
No, I was very present, which is really, when I look back I am amazed how switched on my head was. I changed jobs, and I looked after health clubs, and I had 5 health clubs, I think it was, to look after, and quite a lot of staff and everything. And it was, sometimes I was on autopilot, sometimes I could, but when I coped quite happily, because I knew I had to, and I think I got the strength from Lizzie, and I really did I used to go and chat to her all the time, because Liz was cremated, but I had a stone at the cemetery, and I used to go up there regularly and just blurt everything out. And I had a best friend, which used to listen to me, and my mum and my stepdad were amazing. So I had a good support there. And then literally, was it 6 weeks later, I met my now husband.
Wow.
I certainly was not looking for a relationship, because I'd just come out of that, and I
can imagine last thing on the list of things to manifest. Yeah. That can go at the bottom of the pile for now.
I was quite happy. I'd got my little house set up. I'd got my dog with me. I just wasn't looking for anything. I had known him to say hello to, but not as a friend or anything like that. And we we went, he asked me a couple of times and I said, no. And so in the end I said, oh, go on, I'll go out for a drink. And we sat and talked for 8 hours, I think it was, solid.
Wow.
He knew, well, his family knew my stepfather really well. My stepfather knew all the family. When we talked through things, I mean, he knew of Lizzie because of where we live. It's a small world. He knew what had happened. We later found out that his mum had met Lizzie with my parents, and it was, our families were so intertwined, but they weren't, but they knew each other so well. It was really strange.
Yeah. And so
I was just going to say he helped, because I think people kept saying, well, can you trust? And I said, I can trust him, because I think when I look back, I was scared I wasn't ever going to be able to trust a man again, because of going through. I think if anybody can hurt somebody going through what we went through, it takes a lot of doing. And I just thought, will I ever be able to trust again? Mm-hmm. And I know the first few months I was nervous because I didn't want to be hurt. I'd had enough hurt. That was the last thing I wanted again. Yeah. But he understood that, and he was just so kind. So I knew I was doing the right thing.
Mm. And I mean, honestly, I'm almost speechless, but I've got to remember, I'm like podcast host right now. I'm just in awe of your strength. And I'm also reveling in the joy of the universe, the way it's like, yes, don't worry, love, we got your back. Like there's someone coming. And did you, I'm curious to know, because you said, you got to the cemetery and speak to Lizzie. Were you a spiritual person then, or do you class yourself as a spiritual person?
I've always dabbled. Well, I say always. I've dabbled, but not. I wasn't nowhere near as much as I am. I have been, and I am now. I am totally. I mean, now, say, obviously, I met Steve, and I moved in with him literally within 6 months, and when we have an amazing life. We go on holiday together. I mean, it's the first time I'd ever gone on holiday for 2 weeks, ever, with a man. Because with my ex-husband, we never went away for 2 weeks. We couldn't even, I mean, we got on really well, but 2 weeks, we didn't have the same type of enjoyment of doing things, mm-hmm. but we always go away for 2 weeks at a time, minimum sort of thing. And everything just fell in together, right? So, and then with me, I knew I needed to do something else. I wasn't happy in my job. I needed some time out. So he just said, well, just give everything up. Just stay at home, which I'd wanted to do that when I lost Liz, and my ex-husband said to me, no, you need to go back to work. You can't have any more time off, because I only had 3 weeks off when I lost Liz.
Wow.
And so I had 2.5 months off. And then I said, no, I've got to get my head back into work again. But I only went back I didn't go back into a high-powered job, which I've always had. Mm-hmm. I went into something that I could do with basically my eyes closed, so I didn't have the pressure. Mm. And that's when I started thinking, I need to do more. And so I went down, to begin with, I did my HR qualification, and I kept thinking that it's something else I need to do now. So that's when I started looking into life coaching.
And where was that nudge from? Was it sort of, I'm a bit bored, this HR thing's not really lighting me up, or was it more of like, how did you kind of go, what was it that for you was like, there's more? What was it that was telling you that there was more?
In fact, it was my auntie that really, I think she pushed me more than anything. I kept feeling poorly. Mm-hmm. And I'd got aches and pains, and I was at the doctor's, and I hate going to the doctors and tablets and things like that. So it was after a couple of years, and my auntie, she was a health kinesiologist, which and she sent my cousin had been to see a health kinesiologist as well. And she kept saying to me, look, go and have a chat with somebody, because I think you need to. And I kept saying, I'm perfectly all right. I don't need to go and talk to anybody. Thank you. And she said to my mum, look, when she's right, give her this number, because she needs to go and see somebody. And about literally, I think it was the third year, after losing Liz for the third year, it was January time. And I just thought, I think it's time to go. And so I just said, let's have the number. And I went to see this health kinesiologist, and I laid in on her couch and basically bawled for about 3 hours. Yep. It was an amazing experience. And she's definitely set me off thinking, right, this is it. And it all started making sense in my head, what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. And I knew it wasn't going to be an immediate thing because I needed to heal more before I could help other people heal.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So I just did lots and lots of courses, lots of learning. And eventually, it was probably 3 years ago, and I started really seriously thinking about everything. And then obviously the pandemic hit. Yes. 2 years ago, nearly coming up for 2 years. And I started doing bits and pieces. And then the job I was doing, I worked from home anyway. I was getting more and more asked to do more and more for less hours and things like that. And that they were expecting, because I'd got a good array of abilities because of working for so many different companies over the years. When the lockdown, everything started, they furloughed lots of people and gave me their jobs.
I've heard that story a few times. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Me being me, you say, yeah, I'll do it. But then I got furloughed as well, but still wanting to do everything. And I thought, this is getting really silly. And I thought, I'm not going back to where I've not taken a step back to me mentally. I know where I am now. I'm in such a good place. Mm. And so we knew Steve was going to retire. He'd already decided he was retiring. And he said, just give up then. I said, I can't do that. That's not me. I need to do something. So I said, I'm going to set my own business up. He said, all right then. He says, but remember, because we were changing our life, we started having a narrowboat built because we're going to go and live on the boat. He said, let's make sure it all fits into our new life. And I said, oh, it will. Because I said, I'm going to go and start helping people now. And he went, oh. And I said, I'm also going to write a book. He went, yeah, okay then. And because Steve's not at all spiritualist or alternative medicines or anything, he's very much, you go and work and that's it sort of thing. Yeah. And he said, okay. And he just leaves me to it and just waits to see what's happening. And so I did. I handed my notice in. It's over a year ago now. I handed my notice in and I said, that's it. And they went, really? I said, yeah. Oh. And I set about writing everything, and it's just, yeah. And I just absolutely love the people I help now. And when you get the feedback that they're feeling much better and they can cope with things, it's just amazing. And recently I've trained as a hypnotherapist as well. And that, I think, I wish I'd done that years and years ago, because it helps me personally as well as helping others as well, because you can self-hypnotize, and to get that relaxation is just tremendous.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of hypnotherapy. It's been, I've had sessions before and I'm just like, I don't know how, literally a half an hour with this hypnotherapist and boom, I'm like, that problem solved. Off it goes.
I'm absolutely amazed. I know, I can remember my mum had been hypnotized years and years ago, and people have spoken to me about it, but I'd never experienced it until I did my training. And after that, wow, I was amazed. So now my life is completely just done a complete change. Lizzie's always around. We have a photograph for the house. I did have all her furniture around me still, which has just been shared through to her friends and her nieces, because I can't take it for where we're going now. Yeah. But her photograph will be coming. When we got married, she walked down the aisle with me because I had her photograph on my bouquet, and I had a bouquet made and took to Lizzie on the morning of our wedding, so that I'd got her involved and things like that. Her vicar that she went, because Lizzie's funeral was her vicar from school did her funeral for her. Okay. And she used Lizzie's work from her RE in the funeral, because Lizzie had written about dying for part of her exam, and she kept it to help other children. Gosh. Which was surreal. Yeah. So she came and blessed our rings for us. So Lizzie was involved, and we also had apple sour shots at the wedding. That was Lizzie's favourite.
Love it.
So lots of giggles as well, and everybody was like, especially like the grandparents, going, do we have to drink this? Yes. Yeah. Just
knock it back. And I mean, that's gorgeous. I think not having lost anyone close to me, it was interesting before, when we had our initial chat about talking about this podcast, how we talk about grief showing up in so many different ways. And did you feel, but because grief, is from losing a person, but also you then had the grief of divorce and a marriage separation and everything else that goes along with that. And there are a lot, certainly because of the pandemic as well, that's put a lot of strain on people, not from only a business point of view, but relationships. So I see it I've experienced it myself. I took 7 months off last year because I was like, I need a bit of a break, I think. That's a bit crazy. And I've seen it in clients that, what I've identified, I'm like, you're actually going through grief. It's a grief of a loss of either identity or the business. And so with the clients that you're helping, when you sort of reflect on your journey, because did you get any help in those first 3 years, or was it literally that the kinesiologist that you're like, right, okay, now I feel ready?
It wasn't. I didn't get any help. And the thing is, I must admit, I wasn't offered any help, which is very poor, really. When I look back, and when I talked to my mum about it, she says, yeah, but you didn't want it either. And I said, well, I don't know, because I know I was very headstrong and I knew what I wanted and I was saying, yes, I'm coping. But I don't know. But I know I wasn't offered it at the time, so I don't know if I would have taken it or not. But I mean, I know when looking inward, she says, no, because you were very headstrong. But I might have been able to feel better quicker because, as you said, I had so much going on. And I think I coped with Lizzie more than I did with my job, because I absolutely loved my job at the time and I enjoyed working that time. That was a big grief for me because I lost my identity. And it took me many years to get the confidence back as well from the job, because I worked in management for years and then I went back in to be administrator and earning what I had done 20 years previously, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I must admit, I felt absolutely gutted to begin with. Yes, it was an easy job to do and I didn't have to think about it, so that was good. But I felt like I'd wasted all those years learning and what I was doing and everything. But I was embarrassed in some ways, because I thought, why, I used to be a manager and now I'm an administrator, which when I look back now was awful because it got me to where I wanted to be. But I just felt lost. And I think, and I know, that was the bit, I think such a terrible grief for me was the job side of things. And
so that sort of felt like a loss of identity for you.
Oh, completely. And it took me until I stayed there, I think it was 2.5 years before I went back into doing a role that for me gave me more of my identity back, and able to hold my own. And I felt confident because I lost my confidence as well when I had the time off, because I just needed time away from making decisions. So the job was ideal for me because I didn't have to make any major decisions or anything like that. I just did what I was asked to do.
Yeah.
And then eventually I managed to start going back up again into something that I was enjoying, and helping. It was to do with recruitment and things like that. And it was the HR side of things. So I was helping other people, which was my main passion anyway, even previously. But it took, I'll say it must be, 2.5 years to get my confidence back, because you lose your confidence.
I think it's such an important thing for people to realise, because 2.5 years, it can take that long. That's a loss of identity, and I see so many people struggle with the very fact that they're like, oh, well, I shouldn't be feeling this. I've made the choice to go from management to this, or I've made the choice to leave my job and start my business. But, I see it a lot. I've definitely experienced it when I became a mum. I was this in my head, I was the high heel wearing, suit wearing, did my job professional. And I was like, oh, now I'm wiping sick and walking a buggy. I'm like, I can't remember the last time I wore heels. I'm like, who am I? And then, you transition through different things. And a lot of my clients are at that point where kids are leaving home, going to university, and they're like, oh, hang on a minute, it's another transition. I'm not quite ready for the next transition yet. So I think it's really interesting. How do you help your clients if they're going through, that real feeling of grief, whatever from wherever source it's coming from? What's usually your first sort of port of call and ways to help them
It's the main thing I feel is to ask themselves what they really want and how they're feeling. It's the feel and everything, and to write everything down. I'm a real advocate for writing a journal. I write mine every single day, and sometimes it's just not ever so long. Sometimes it's a good, you just feel everything out. I found that over the years, you get it out of your head and onto paper, it's so much easier to deal with. And so all my clients, that's the first thing I say, right, every day from now on, you're writing everything down, but also to look for something positive in every single day. And it can be the smallest little thing, but take an awful lot from that positivity, because when you're feeling really low and you're grieving, you don't think there's anything positive around you, but there is always something, and it's just looking for that and just deep down. And never ever beat yourself up the way you're feeling, because tomorrow will be completely different. And my biggest thing is all types of grief is like a roller coaster. And you'll be probably at the very, very top of it one day and as high and feeling really, really ecstatic and happy. And the next day you could be really feeling, oh God, why have I woke up feeling like this? And everything's really bad. And also, it's okay to be okay, because people, when they are grieving in everything, they feel guilty if they're having good days. And you should never, ever feel that. Don't just take everything, every single day is a new day. Because if you do everything as positively as you can, you will start to feel better. Speak as well. Just don't hold everything inside you. You don't have to go to counsellors and coaches and everything. If you've got a best friend you can speak to, but don't get them to give you your answers. You just need to get everything out of your mouth and get somebody to listen, because once it's out, you're listening to yourself as well when you're speaking. And that's when it's amazing how you can answer your own questions a lot of the time and your own problems, because when it's out, you think, oh, it's not that bad anymore. And you've got somebody else there nodding and saying yes to you, and it just helps you. And you think, I can go that way. I can do that. I am strong enough. And it's the belief in yourself.
Yeah. And there's two things I really want to pick up from there. I think that's really, really valuable, because the journaling for sure, and I think there's so much nonsense about journaling, like it's this massive complicated thing. It's literally pen, paper, write, just literally whatever's in your brain, just put it out on paper. And certainly in my experience, like I said, I took quite a substantial amount of time off last year, and I had some eye surgery in June, and I knew I was going to have 10 days, and I was actually doing some really deep healing at the same time, like mental, spiritual healing. And bearing in mind, I couldn't even see the page because I'd had eye surgery. I filled a notebook, an entire notebook with journaling, and I have never healed so much so quickly just from actually getting it out. And you're so right, when it's out of your head, you're like, oh, I can process this. And our brains are so clever. We always have the answers within us or from guidance one way or the other. And we're like, oh yeah, that's why. And the other point I wanted to sort of touch on there is, did you feel, or do you experience when the clients come to you, because you said about sort of talking to a friend, I do find sometimes when you talk to friends, they just desperately want to fix things for you. They desperately want to jump in and go, I read this, or there's this a bit of advice. And actually, that's why sometimes it is useful having a coach like yourself to kind of go, I just need to talk. And you will listen, and you'll know the right questions to ask, rather than go, well, here's a big plaster to fit over it and it's all fixed.
You're so right, because that's it. You've got to have a friend that will not give you your answers back, and they would just listen, because otherwise that's not going to help you, because they'll, as you say, they just want to make you feel better. And as a life coach, you want them to feel better, but you're not going to say to them, it's all right, put your arm around. It's going to be all right, because it will eventually, but you've got to fix it yourself. Nobody can really fix you. It's you have to fix yourself. And you can only do that by talking and listening to yourself. And it can take a while, but you will definitely get there. And I think one of the other things, especially if you're grieving because you've not been able to tell somebody how you feel before you've lost them, or if you've lost a job and you're really upset about that particular job, write that down and screw it up and either burn it or throw it away, but get it out so it's away from you. And that's a really good one to do, is to write exactly how you're feeling, screw it up and burn it, or to get rid of it, because it's gone then and you've taken it out of your head and it's not coming back.
Yeah, 100%. And my listeners will know that I'm burning paper all the time, especially around the full moon. I'm like, all right, how many pages of this am I going to burn today? So I think it's really, really powerful. And I'm curious to know, before we sort of let everyone know about your book and things you've got going on, is there a part that forgiveness plays in managing grief? Yes,
100%. And I didn't realise how important that was for many years. Because Lizzie wasn't driving, her friend was driving, I blamed her friend for quite a while. And it took me, and at the cemetery, Lizzie's not far from her friend. Her friend was buried, but they're very close to each other. And I went to the funeral, but I didn't come to the actual cemetery, to the burial. And I used to walk past it, but I wouldn't go close enough to see anything because I was so cross, because I was upset because she basically killed Lizzie, in my eyes at the time.
Yeah.
And it was literally, it's only not that many years ago, probably 5 years, 6 years ago at the most. I don't know why. And all of a sudden, I just said to Steve, my husband, and I just said, I need to take flowers to Emily as well. And I said, because this is stupid. It was an accident. And I know it was an accident. It was the coroners, everybody said it was an accident, but I didn't think about it at the time. And everything hit with me. It was a pure accident. And I went and put flowers at hers and took flowers to Liz. And same exactly with my ex-husband. He did what he did. It was the right reason to me now, because I have an amazing life. And if he hadn't done what he did, I wouldn't be as happy as I am now, because I've never, ever been so happy. Even when I was previously married, I know that I was never as happy as I am now.
Yeah. And
I can have a chat to him when I see him. He squirms like mad. It's quite amusing, really. I enjoy it because, if anything, I'm very, very nice, because it just makes me giggle. But that's the...
I love that. But I think, it's really... And I think that's another really interesting point, that sometimes we do, especially, my listeners are very, very attuned to what they need. And I think as coaches, we can be a little bit too aware sometimes, because we're like, oh, hang on, this is a thought process. Let me find out what this means. And is this from this and from that? But from what you just said then about forgiving the friend, maybe it's just time. Do you feel like it was just the right time? Do you think there could have been anything you would have done or could have done differently to get to that point earlier, or was it purely just...
No, I don't think. I think it was just me and something triggered. I don't know what triggered it. There's something triggered it, and I just thought, because I sat in the coroner's office when I went through everything, so I knew at the end, I knew it was an accident, but I couldn't forgive her because I just couldn't do it. And then I don't know what it was, just one day I just thought, no, I need to go and put flowers and forgive her because it was an accident. And it was just the right time. Yeah,
amazing. So tell me all about the book, because I've said a million times, I'm going to write a book. I don't know whether it'll ever happen. I hate it. People say, so how did you go from I'm going to write a book to actually writing a book? What was the drive for that? What was the thing that got you through writing however many hundred pages that are in there?
It's not a huge book. I thought, because of what I'd gone through, which obviously we've spoken about today, and other people go through horrific times, and they struggle coming out the other side. Mm-hmm. And because I'm so passionate about my journaling, and in my previous life when I was training team members and things like that, and it always takes 31 days to change a habit. Right? So I thought, right, I'm going to tell my story so people can see when you go through some really, real crappy times, and you can come out the other side. And so I literally sat for probably about a month. I just decided I'm going to do it, and sat and just kept putting bits down. Then I walked away and did it a bit more because it was quite difficult to write because you bring everything back to how you're thinking and everything. Yeah. And then I knew at the end of it, because I journal so much, and I did a 31-day journal so that people then start doing their journaling every day and they get into the habit of doing it and writing it down. So by the time they finish the journaling, they'll be in that habit and enjoying it and seeing where it can help them. And I offer a free 60-minute chat as well. If they wanted to contact me, they can contact me and have the free chat. So you can see where you can go from the next stage. And because I love journaling so much, I wrote a year journal and had it published mainly for myself, really, because I want to be able to have a journal to write in. But it's got affirmations in for each day, and you've got your positive word and everything. So I published it through Amazon. I got it proofread. The first one was a dire, and they published when it was uploaded. It hadn't uploaded the right one, so it was like a nightmare. But we got all that sorted out eventually. And it's just, and the feedback has been amazing because it is helping people, and that's the only reason I did it. Just so that if I could only help one person, I did what I wanted it to do. But luckily, it's helped quite a few people, which is even better.
Yeah, it's amazing. And did you find it helped you writing the book as well? Did you find it therapeutic?
Yeah, I did. It was amazing. Again, because it gets everything out of your head, I think it made me reflect a lot. And I could see different things happening, and that's when I've said I should have done this earlier, I should have done that earlier, but that's life, and I wouldn't be where I am now if I had done anything earlier. So
yeah. And sometimes, we can do that. Hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? But, we look back, and I truly believe that we're doing the best we can with the knowledge we have at that time, isn't it? We can look back and go, whoops. Honestly, we'd all be ruling the world if we knew now, when we were 20, what we know now. It's like, well, the world would be in a whole different place. That's absolutely amazing. Well, it's been such a joy speaking to you. Your story is so powerful. I am going to apologize now to everyone who's got mascara down their face. I had to really hold it together. I don't know how you manage. Well, you've obviously done this quite a lot of times, sharing your story, but you do it so eloquently. And where can they find the book for a start, and where else can they find your services and your help?
The book's on Amazon. So it's 31 Days Life-Changing Journal. But if you just type in Maxine K. Brown, you'll find me. And I have a website, which is mkblifecoach.com, and everything's on there. And as I say, I offer a free 60-minute chat, because make sure that everybody gets on and you feel that you're comfortable talking to me. So and if anybody wants any help, just give me a shout.
Absolutely amazing. And is it for all areas of grief or all areas of life coaching?
Yeah, life coaching, grief, bereavement, obviously speciality, because I've been through it and everything. But any general life coaching and hypnotherapy as well. And I get battered because I keep my prices so very low, which I know I shouldn't do for life coaching, but I do it because I want more and more people to be able to get the help, because that's what you need when you're struggling.
And I think that's a really valid point, because I think there's the right coach for everyone. Being in the coaching industry for as long as I have, there is absolutely the right coach for the right level, for the right person at the right time. I believe there'll be someone listening to this that goes, she's my woman. That's the lady I need to speak to. And I think I don't know whether you've seen this, but certainly my experience is I'm speaking to a lot more people now who ultimately are really looking for mental health services, and the lack of mental health services out there, just because they're under such demand after such a terrible couple of years. And also a positive side, the more awareness of mental health and how important it is. And it's kind of heartbreaking to see, because I'm not a therapist. I don't ever pretend to be, but it's amazing how people are seeking help, and the help isn't necessarily there, or isn't at a price point that's available to them. So I do. There's the right person for the right time as well. So I would definitely recommend, if you want to have a chat with Maxine, head over to the website. All the links to her book, all the links to her website will be in the show notes as well. But Maxine, it's just been amazing speaking to you. You are, like I said, I know you're very humble and you're like, oh, I don't need a cape, but I think you do deserve a cape. Superwoman you are.
Thank you. It's been lovely.
It's been amazing. Good luck with the house move.
Thank you.
Because for everyone, bless her, she's literally a week away from moving house. So I've been very lucky to get a moment with her before she's moving on to our beautiful new boat. So yeah, good luck with everything, my lovely. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, any resources and links mentioned in this episode can be found in the show notes. If you're enjoying this podcast, I would be so grateful if you would kindly share, subscribe, and leave a positive review so that the podcast can help and reach as many people as possible. Thank you again for listening. Have a gorgeous day, and I'll see you in the next episode.